In the opulent private wing of New York's premier medical center, where crystal chandeliers hung over marble floors and the air smelled of luxury lifestyle excess, Anna lay motionless on the hospital bed, her ears catching the hushed conversation between her fiancé, the billionaire CEO Christian Grey, and the doctor. The surgery could still pull her back from the brink, but any delay meant lifelong paralysis. Christian waved it off with icy indifference, declaring that even if she ended up disabled, he'd care for her eternally as her possessive husband. He couldn't chance her full recovery stirring up drama at the wedding. He'd vowed to his hidden lover, Stella Alonso, a triumphant arrival for their child into the Grey Empire. Only by rendering Anna utterly helpless could she embrace the kid as her own without suspicion. Whether crippled or not, at least she wouldn't pose a threat to the child in this dark romance swirling with revenge and jealousy. A single tear traced down Anna's cheek. The wedding she'd fantasized about for years was nothing but a facade, a forced marriage warped into enemies to lovers that had soured into betrayal. Christian commanded the procedure to go ahead, excising her uterus with precision, leaving no evidence. Once she stirred awake, he'd retrieve the child from the orphanage. Barren now, she'd lavish affection on his offspring, maybe even delude herself into feeling pregnant someday. The doctor mopped sweat from his forehead, begging for a rethink. Anna was already half paralyzed. This would shatter her completely. How could she confront the Grey family elders in their sprawling Italian villa, with its vineyards stretching under the sun and private jets parked on the estate's airstrip? And that 3-year-old with Stella bore an uncanny resemblance to Christian, the obsessive alpha male. If Anna uncovered the truth, it would unravel everything in this age-gap story where grumpy sunshine had twisted into shadows. Christian tenderly dabbed Anna's parched lips with a damp cloth, his tone dripping with fake sorrow. She'd remain oblivious. As long as she stayed confined to that luxurious Italian villa, draped in Cartier jewelry and Van Cleef necklaces he'd showered upon her, unable to venture out, everything would hold. He'd assured Stella a spectacular wedding, where they'd watch their child flourish, even as Anna bound herself to him in this marriage of convenience. The doctor exhaled heavily, eyeing Anna's ashen face. She was such a good girl. They'd shared a childhood steeped in luxury lifestyle grandeur. But Christian dismissed it all. Prep the operating room, keep it flawless, no scars. He didn't want her writhing in agony upon waking, his dominant instincts veiled for now. The doctor hurried out. Christian fired off a voice memo to his assistant, make sure the driver stays silent. Transfer $2 million to his kin. Whisk them away on a private jet to vanish from the city. No hints for Anna in this tangled net of deception. Tears soaked her pillow relentlessly. The wedding she'd awaited for 5 years was merely a smokescreen for Stella, the interloper in this possessive husband's domain. That car crash hadn't been random. It was Christian's ruthless ploy to sideline her, his touch her and die philosophy aimed at her own future. Her envisioned bliss was a mirage. Deceit and treachery defined their reality in this dark romance. She fought to pry her eyes open, but the anesthesia surged through her veins. As they rolled her into the sterile operating theater, Christian leaned in, brushing a kiss on her forehead with deceptive gentleness. It would all wrap up soon, baby girl, in the obsessive alpha male's realm. He'd be right there for her, his little wife. The chill of instruments invaded, fracturing her spirit alongside her form. When consciousness returned in the penthouse-level hospital suite, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Manhattan skyline, her lower body stayed numb. Christian perched nearby, his expression carved with feigned concern. He cradled her hand against his cheek, murmuring about any discomfort, vowing to swap her medications, his dominant edge momentarily subdued. Just as always, his affectionate facade masked a frozen emptiness. How far would someone plunge for another in this enemies-to-lovers saga? She shook her head faintly, grazing his rough stubble. He hadn't rested. She was okay, he needed sleep. Easing back, he drifted off. She snatched his phone from the nightstand. The lock screen flaunted their pre-wedding shots, captured in a lavish New York penthouse overlooking Central Park, where city lights danced on expansive glass panes. It unlocked easily, revealing a social app with a pinned contact Stella baby. The chat brimmed with adorable cat emojis and snapshots of Stella with the child. The kid had pined for daddy that day, dubbing him handsome, a chip off the billionaire CEO block, bound to shatter hearts. He'd scarfed down the cake Christian dispatched from his private jet's gourmet kitchen, pleading for an amusement park outing with dad. Christian hadn't typed responses, but each image showed 2-hour video watches. Recalling how he'd claimed to despise kids, Anna grasped he simply loathed the notion of heirs from her, his possessive husband instincts hoarding legacies for his true choice. He kept a private album for Stella, locked with the child's birth date. Over 5,000 images chronicled 3 years of milestones, every holiday indulged in opulence. Private jets whisking them to the Hamptons, yacht soirees on the Mediterranean, weekends in the Italian villa boasting marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Another thread was with the wedding coordinator, initiated a month prior. Christian had slotted Stella's name from the start. The dress matched her measurements, invitations scripted in their shared penmanship. He'd never meant for Anna to grace this forced marriage ritual. She mustered a bitter smirk, messaging her closest friend to orchestrate surgery overseas and void all her local identifications. Her friend figured she'd glimpsed Christian's real facade, rooting for her in this revenge scheme. Placing the phone back, Anna sank into profound slumber. She roused to Christian's theatrical sobs, clutching a medical report. The doctors had discovered she was born without a uterus, inherently infertile. He pledged unwavering loyalty, no abandonment ever, as the obsessive alpha male. They'd adopt post-discharge. It might mend her, even spark illusions of her becoming pregnant. He appeared more wrecked than she did, his performance impeccable in this dark romance. She nodded wordlessly at the document. Moved, he enveloped her in an embrace, tears cascading. He'd safeguard her forever, defy the universe as her possessive husband. After the vows, he'd shift all his holdings to her for assurance. A billionaire's oath amid his luxury lifestyle. Their torsos pressed near, yet pulses clashed. Tentatively, he broached the wedding preparations being set, but with her frail state, a stand-in might be needed to uphold the Grey clan's prestige in their penthouse galas. Sensing his ploy, Anna floated the idea herself, salvaging honor in this marriage of convenience. Taken aback by her pivot yet elated, he consented. His phone buzzed, he peeped, then brushed off a notification. Why scrap her IDs? She shrugged it off casually, outdated, refreshed digitally. He swallowed the excuse, drawing her closer, his voice laced with sham sympathy. Whatever she craved, he'd procure. She couldn't move freely, his little wife. She's mine. Every breath she takes belongs to me. No one else will ever have what's my possession in this obsessive world. Christian, she yearned to escape the hospital confines. Tension seized him. No, her form wasn't prepared. She tugged his sleeve playfully, flashing a grin. Didn't he crave adoption? Nannies in the penthouse could assist. She longed to tour the orphanage. In their 5 years intertwined, her inaugural flirtatious beg melted him. He yielded, his grumpy sunshine facade flickering briefly. En route in his sleek Maybach, gliding through Manhattan's shimmering avenues, he unveiled a cake from the rear, insisting it was hers. But the wrapping screamed child-appealing, pricking her vision. She flung it away, pretending unease, sealing her eyes. This half-decade charade concluded now in this narrative of jealousy and revenge. At the orphanage, bankrolled by Grey Enterprises with plush play zones rivaling luxury resorts, Anna sat in her wheelchair. A small girl dashed to Christian, clutching his leg, deeming him daddy. His complexion blanched, fumbling an excuse he funded it. Dropped by frequently. The orphan just tagged him that way. Anna inclined her head, caressing the child's cheek. She mirrored him. Sans his admission, she'd peg it as his heir to the billionaire CEO. Her name? Lily. The very one he'd claim in this dark romance. Before further unraveling, Lily wailed for mommy. Christian paled further, nudging Anna it was all right, comfort her. The kid was endearing. Anna would adore her, his dominant timbre insisting. Eased, he hoisted Lily toward the office. Anna wheeled to the restroom. Overhearing staff whispers why feign the child's orphan status? Clad in upscale like Cartier baubles, costlier than existences. Christian staged it for seamless entry into the gray lineage. Clever, don't leak to Anna, the submissive figure in his gaze. Truly, his affections anchored to Stella. Back in university, they volunteered there. Chemistry ignited and enemies to lovers style. Snickers rang about their secluded moments in chambers, where garments were rent in possessive rage, bodies slammed against walls in dominant clutches. It pulverized Anna's core. Glimpsing inside, familiar tones. How's he with you? Decent, but jet-setting abroad on private jets, absent for milestones. Fine, Lily's veil holds. He pesters for another baby from me, maybe rendering her pregnant as his heir. Christian smirked tartly. Once Lily settles in the New York penthouse, fret not. Ping for necessities. Oh, this Van Cleef bracelet. Your nuptial token from the mafia boss facet of him. Stella snatched it teasingly. Another? Your wardrobe overflows after our covert year wedded. If Anna learned, chaos. But she acquiesced without hesitation. Lily bounded, labeling her mommy incessantly. The director barged in for documents, shoving past Anna, flinging the door wide. Christian panicked. Anna, don't misconstrue. Stella volunteers today, hashing Lily's adoption. Stella rose, cradling Lily, gesturing. Ages since. Anna, wheeled and composed, nodded with a forced smile, gulping pain. All right, just roaming. If occupied, she'd linger in the vehicle. No bother. She departed. Christian pursued, clarifying kids dub her mommy from gatherings. After adoption, he'd straighten it. Witnessing his anxiety, Anna nearly chuckled. To validate the child, he'd engineered the wreck, maiming her in this forced marriage. Goal met. Whose lament was this? Reassure her she wasn't irrational. Wrap the paperwork. She'd await dutifully like a good girl. He unwound, his possessive gaze trailing her to the car. Staff passers-by shot mocking glances. Brushing them off, she completed ID annulments online. To toast Lily's homecoming, the Grays threw a feast in their extravagant New York penthouse. Skyline vistas through panoramic windows, crystal stemware chiming in luxury lifestyle splendor. Anna begged convalescence, sequestering upstairs. Yet downstairs, Ken's jeers filtered up. Behold that idyllic trio. From the staircase bend, Anna observed Christian tenderly plating Lily's preferences. Stella jested he'd pamper her rotten. He shrugged, tweaking Lily's petite tiara. My daughter could pierce the heavens. She's flawless, his mafia boss presence radiating. Bottled sorrow detonated. Retreating to the chamber, she ravaged 5 years' mementos. Shredded gowns from fervent nights, where he'd tear fabric in possessive frenzy. Pinning her to walls and bruising wall dunks that ignited desire. Their forms entangled in dominant submissive dances. Echoes of red ropes constraining her as retribution for fancied offenses, all within the red room of their penthouse, where limo garage car shakes escalated to bath escapades and marble enclaves with belts grazing her flesh teasingly, the age gap amplifying his command. You're mine, baby girl. Mine to ruin, little wife, in this dark romance where I dominate and you submit. The trash bin overturned as Stella materialized, toppling the wheelchair. Anna perspired in torment, Stella sneered. Turning cripple stings, right? Years on, still worthless. Witnessing your vows reassigned to me, your spouse embracing my daughter. You endure it. Pathetic. Anna hauled herself up. Stella plummeted downstairs theatrically. Christian scooped her, scowling at Anna. What on earth? Stella graciously summoned you for supper. Why assault? Relatives glowered, cripples stirring strife. Figured she was still an heiress? Nobody desires a discard except our boy. Her impairment's retribution. Blood trickled below as nails pierced palms. Christian bore Stella in one arm, guided Lily with the other, dashing out in his Maybach. 5 years' devotion incinerated. Anna wheeled onward, reserving a wedding day getaway. To a hotel initially, fleeing the opulent cage. That evening, Christian texted Stella proxies the ceremony, injuring her reflex poorly. Apology was pretense for optics. Kinsbarb's hollow, post vows they'd grovel. He harbored a shock she'd cherish it. But Anna recognized the charade targeted her, not Stella. Half-decade simulating. Era to terminate this enemies to lovers' horror. The ensuing days she evaded. He absented, overseeing the nuptials in a majestic hall with dangling chandeliers and exotic blooms, yachts moored adjacent for attendees. Wedding dawn, she phoned. He was with Ada firm shifting half-equities to Stella? Hazardous, not blood. Execute it, her recompense. Remainder for the offspring. Welcome invitees firsthand. Monitor her clan's theatrics. He answered tardily apologies. Rites commence shortly. Return to you post. Don't pout. Stone-faced at her boarding pass, she uttered occupied then. Joyous union, Christian. He chortled our joyous union. Stay put. Device discarded, she embarked on the commercial liner for liberation, forsaking private jets and penthouses. God ID voiding confirmation, erased his traces. At the right, her words haunted his thoughts, disquiet mounting. To aid trace Anna, with me wedding another, she'll erupt in jealousy. The march concluded. Christian clinked glasses with Stella in the lavish auditorium. Aid dashed in pallid grim tidings. Anna jetted out dawn. Aircraft plunged into ocean. Hush enveloped. Christian's elated visage bled color, goblet fragmenting. He seized the caller, savagely repeat that. Where's Anna? She's mine forever.